They threw him out with nothing but $7 and a dog. Yet what he built in the mountains shocked everyone when winter hit. Before the first snow even touched the Sawtooth Mountains, a homeless veteran and his loyal dog were forced into the wilderness with nothing but a broken axe and $7. But instead of giving up, he built something no one believed could survive the winter. Before we begin, comment below. Where are you watching from? The eviction notice was still flapping on the screen door when Cole Barrett stepped off the porch for the last time. The wind coming down from the Sawtooth Mountains tore at the paper, snapping it like a warning flag in a war he no longer had the strength to fight. Behind him, the landlord's voice carried through the cold air, sharp, dismissive, and final. Told you, Barrett, no more chances. I'm not housing a man with problems, and definitely not that dog. Cole didn't turn around. He didn't trust himself to. The old trigger in his chest, tight, hot, sudden, flickered awake the way it always did when someone said the word problems. He swallowed the reaction and kept walking because there was nothing left to say, nothing left to salvage. Hawkeye padded beside him, the big shepherd's dark coat rippling in the wind. The dog glanced up every few steps, as if checking whether Cole needed him to bite something or simply stay close. Cole reached down and brushed his hand over Hawkeye's head. The touch steadied him, the same way it had steadied him in places far more dangerous than this frozen patch of Idaho. At the edge of the gravel driveway, Cole stopped. Everything he owned fit inside a single worn backpack slung across his shoulder. A rucksack from his recon days that should have been retired years ago. Inside were a couple shirts, a dented metal canteen, a roll of paracord, and a photo of his unit. Edges bent from being handled too much on nights he couldn't sleep. In his pocket he had exactly $7 and some change. It jingled faintly when he shifted his weight, a reminder of how small his world had become. The only useful tool he had, an old axe, hung from a loop on his belt. The handle cracked along one side. He'd planned to repair it before winter, maybe carve a new grip. Now that didn't matter much. Winter wasn't waiting. The air already smelled of frost, carrying the metallic bite that told mountain men when the season was turning for real. Snow would come early this year. He felt it in his bones, in the stiffness of the ground under his boots, in the breath of wind rolling down from the ridge. Hawkeye whined softly and nudged Cole's hand with his nose. Cole let out a rough exhale, not quite a sigh, but close. "Yeah," he murmured. "I know, buddy. We'll figure something out." But the truth was, he had nothing. No home, no plan, no job willing to take a veteran whose nights were broken by nightmares and whose days were haunted by the echoes of things he'd tried so hard to forget. Employers didn't say it to his face, but the message was always the same. You look normal, but something in your eyes says you're not. And we don't want that liability around here. Cole Barrett had been many things. Marine, scout, survivor. Now he felt like little more than a ghost drifting between the edges of a country he'd once promised to protect. The Sawtooth Mountains stretched before him, blue and jagged against the pale afternoon sky. Snow dusted the highest peaks like powdered glass. Winter was coming fast, and out here, winter didn't forgive mistakes. A logging truck rumbled by on the far road, kicking up dust and pine needles. The driver didn't slow down. Nobody did. Not for a man walking with a backpack in late September. People in mountain towns could spot trouble the way hawks spotted movement, instantly and from far away. Cole shifted the weight on his back, unsure of where his feet were taking him. Away was the only direction that mattered for now. Away from the humiliation. Away from the judgment. Away from the door that had slammed shut on him and the one creature that refused to leave his side. The world blurred at the edges for a moment. He blinked hard, forcing the rising storm inside him back down. He'd faced worse than this. Desert nights, mortar fire, The quiet aftermath when radios stopped crackling and the only thing left was the pounding of his own pulse. This shouldn't hurt more than that. But somehow it did. A gust of wind slashed across the valley, sharp enough to sting his cheeks. Hawkeye pressed closer, leaning his weight into Cole's leg. Cole knelt, letting the pack slide to the ground, and buried both hands in the thick fur at the dog's neck. Hawkeye licked his knuckles once, slow and deliberate, as if reminding him, "You're not alone. Not as long as I'm here." Cole's throat tightened. "Guess it's you and me again," he said quietly. Above them, a raven called out from a dead branch, the sound echoing across the empty field like a cold omen. Cole stared toward the distant mountains, their silhouettes harsh and unforgiving against the dimming sky. Winter would kill a man who wasn't prepared. And he wasn't prepared. Not for the cold, not for the nights, not for the memories that prowled the edges of his mind when darkness fell. But he didn't have a choice. He lifted the backpack again, settled it across his shoulders, tightened the strap around the broken axe handle, and started walking toward the tree line, where dusk was already gathering like a curtain. Behind him, Hawkeye followed without hesitation, his tail low but steady, his ears flicking to every sound, a guardian in a world that had stopped guarding its own. Cole didn't know where they were going, only that they had to move before the cold took hold, and that somehow, somewhere in the wilderness ahead, he would have to carve out a place for them to survive. "Come on, Hawkeye," he said softly. "Let's find a way to get through one more winter." And with that, the veteran and his loyal dog disappeared into the darkening forest, two shadows drifting into a season that could either break them or force them to rise again. The first hour was nothing but the sound of boots sinking into cold soil and Hawkeye's steady breathing beside him. The forest was thinning as fall surrendered its last strength, the aspens along the ridge turning the color of old brass. Light slipped between the trees in long, tired lines, fading fast as if even the sun didn't want to stay out in the cold. Cole didn't know where he was going, only that staying still meant dying early. The Sawtooth Mountains weren't gentle with anyone, but they were particularly brutal to men with nothing, the kind of brutal he understood too well. Hawkeye stopped suddenly, ears flicking forward. Cole paused. "What is it, boy?" The dog didn't bark. He just turned his head sharply toward the north ridge, his nose working the air. Then, without warning, he trotted off the path, following something only he could smell. "Hawkeye!" Cole called, but there wasn't panic in his voice, just urgency. Hawkeye never bolted without purpose. Not overseas, not stateside, not ever. Cole followed, brushing past brittle branches and weaving through pine trunks scarred by wind and winter. His breath puffed in white clouds as he climbed, boots scraping rock and roots until Hawkeye stopped at the edge of a shallow rise. Cole reached him and saw it, a natural alcove carved into the hillside, shaped like the inside of a giant bowl. Moss clung to one side. Exposed stone curved inward in a near-perfect arc, maybe 6 feet deep and wide enough for a man and a dog to lie down side by side. A dry creek bed snaked below it, the rocks smoothed by water long gone but promising runoff when snow melted. Cole's breath stalled. He stepped forward, studying the formation, the way a Marine studies terrain before setting up camp. Overhang high enough to block snowfall, back wall sturdy enough to reflect heat, elevation safe from flash flooding, hidden from view, shielded from wind on two sides. It was as if the mountain had carved out a place for someone clinging to their last thread of hope. "Well," Cole whispered, "I'll be damned." Hawkeye wagged his tail once, just once, like he was saying, "I brought you here for a reason." Cole crouched under the arc of stone, brushing away loose dirt with his sleeve. "This could work," he murmured, running his fingers along the curve of the rock. If I build off the natural shape, if I brace it right, if the snow slides instead of settles. Memories stirred. Field shelters scraped together in hostile valleys. Nights spent shivering under tarps waiting for dawn, improvising with whatever nature or war left behind. The same instincts rose now, sharp and old, reminding him of who he used to be before civilian life turned into something he no longer recognized. He stood slowly, scanning the surroundings. The ridge above dipped into a pocket of saplings, young lodgepole pine and willow shoots, thin, flexible, alive. You could bend them without breaking them. You could shape them, use them, make them into something new. His heartbeat picked up. Cole hadn't felt this in years. Not excitement exactly, but purpose. The quiet ignition of a mind remembering how to solve problems when survival depended on it. "Hawkeye," he said softly, "you just found us a fighting chance." The dog pressed his head into Cole's hip, a warm weight against the cold creeping into his bones. Cole looked at the sky. Twilight was bleeding across the ridge, staining the clouds purple and indigo. Night would fall hard and fast, and temperatures would drop even faster. He couldn't start building now, but he could gather what he needed tomorrow. He could plan. He could imagine the structure standing strong against winter's assault. For the first time since the landlord slammed the door and sealed his future with a few cruel words, Cole felt something shift inside him. Not enough to call it hope, but close. He unrolled his thin sleeping mat beneath the curve of the stone, positioned it where the wind couldn't reach, and leaned the broken-handled axe within arm's length. Hawkeye circled twice and settled against him, warm and steady. "Not perfect," Cole whispered, staring at the slice of moon beginning to rise. "But it's a start." A distant owl called into the valley, and the forest answered with deep, ancient quiet. Cole closed his eyes, letting exhaustion weigh down his muscles. PTSD always lurked at the edges of sleep, waiting to drag him back to places he wished he could forget. But tonight, the ridge felt different, as if the mountain itself stood between him and the memories. When the first nightmare snapped him awake hours later, flashes of sand, metal, and shouting, Hawkeye was already there, pushing his head beneath Cole's hand, grounding him back to the present. Cole breathed in the scent of pine and cold earth. "I'm okay," he rasped. "I'm here. We're here." Hawkeye stayed pressed against him until Cole's heartbeat steadied. Dawn arrived in a muted wash of gray. A thin frost coated the ground, crunching under Cole's boots as he rose and stepped out into the chilly morning air. He scanned the ridge again, this time with intention, mapping out saplings, clay deposits, angles of light, and wind patterns. He could build here. He would build here. And for the first time in a long time, Cole Barrett felt himself standing on the edge of something that wasn't loss, something that might just save his life. He placed a firm hand on Hawkeye's back. "Let's get to work," he said. And the dog, as always, followed him without hesitation. The morning rose thin and pale, the kind of mountain light that never fully warmed the world beneath it. Cole wiped frost from his beard as he climbed toward the thicket of young lodgepole pines. The saplings stood straight and tall, packed tight along the ridge, their green needles trembling in the cold wind, a perfect place to gather the wood he needed. He ran a hand along one of the trunks, flexible, alive, bendable. Just like the makeshift frames they used overseas when tents were shredded or supply drops didn't arrive. A soldier learned fast. You worked with what nature gave you, or you didn't work at all. "Looks like you've done half the scouting for me," Cole murmured to Hawkeye, who sniffed eagerly at the ground as if claiming credit. Cole tightened his grip on the cracked axe handle and swung. The blade bit into the sapling with a dull thud. 2 more strikes, and the young tree gave way. He dragged it aside, then cut another, and another. His breath came in cold gasps. His shoulders burned. But it was a clean kind of pain, purposeful, almost welcome. By midday, he had a small pile of saplings, roughly the same length and thickness. Sweat clung to his shirt despite the cold wind, steam rising from his skin like he was standing near a campfire. And for the first time in weeks, maybe months, he felt a sliver of pride. He was doing something, building something, surviving. Hawkeye lifted his head suddenly, ears stiffening. "What is it now?" Cole asked. The answer came with the crunch of boots on frozen earth. 3 men appeared between the pines, loggers by the look of them. Heavy coats, thick gloves, saws slung over their shoulders. Mountain men with faces weathered from years of wind and wood smoke. They stopped a few yards away, forming a loose half-circle around Cole's worksite. The tallest one, broad chest, beard like steel wool, spat a streak of tobacco into the snow. "Well, I'll be damned," he drawled. "If it ain't the vet fella from down near the creek." Cole straightened, cautious but calm. Hawkeye slid silently to his side, tail low, posture alert but not aggressive. The dog's amber eyes tracked every movement. The second man let out a low chuckle. "You out here cutting toothpicks for winter, Barrett?" Cole gripped the axe handle. "Just gathering what I need." "What you need?" the first man repeated, amused. He jerked his chin toward the saplings. "Looks more like you're building a squirrel cage." The men laughed. Hawkeye growled, a quiet, unmistakable warning. Cole laid a steadying hand on the dog's back. "Easy, boy." The third logger, younger than the others and missing half a front tooth, squinted at Cole's growing pile. "What are you doing with all that green stick? Burning it? You'll choke yourself on smoke before winter even starts." Cole kept his eyes level. "Not burning it. Building with it." That earned a louder laugh. "Building?" the bearded one scoffed. "With what? Branches and hope?" Cole said nothing. The man stepped closer, boots creaking. "Listen, soldier. These hills eat folks alive when they don't know what they're doing. And you're out here talking like you can beat winter with a few weeds and a bad axe." The words hit deeper than the man intended, like a punch to the gut. Cole felt that tightness spark in his chest again. Hot, fast, unwelcome. Not anger exactly, but shame. Shame that came from being dismissed, judged, seen as broken. He'd heard it before in different accents, different tones. Can't keep his head straight. Not safe to have around. He's not the same since he came back. Cole inhaled slowly through his nose, fighting the memories. Sand, heat, sirens. The way the world turned upside down without warning. Hawkeye pressed his shoulder against Cole's thigh, grounding him. The younger logger shook his head. "Man can't even hold on to a rental house, and now he thinks he can play mountain builder." Cole tightened his jaw. "I'm not looking for trouble." "Yeah?" the bearded one sneered. "Then why's your dog look ready to rip someone's arm off?" Hawkeye didn't move. He didn't need to. The threat was in the stillness. Cole stroked the dog's ear. "He's just protective." "Protective?" The man smirked. "From what? Sticks and stones?" That did it. Something in Cole snapped. Not in anger, but resolve. He lifted the sapling he'd just cut and planted one end into the ground, showing the natural bend as he pressed it into an arc. "You bend them while they're green," he said, voice steady. "Shape the frame into a dome. Snow slides right off. Heat stays inside. Dirt and clay seal the gaps." The men looked unconvinced. He pointed toward the ridge. "I've seen structures like this outlast winter storms overseas. This mountain can't throw anything at me I haven't survived somewhere else." A moment of silence hung in the cold air. The bearded man finally snorted. "Well," he said, "I'll give you credit. You've got imagination. The second man added, "And desperation." They turned and walked away, laughter dissolving into the wind. Cole stood still long after their footsteps faded. Shame simmered beneath his ribs, but Hawkeye leaned into him again, quiet solidarity in the face of mockery. Cole's fingers sank into the dog's fur. "We're doing it anyway," he whispered. "Let 'em laugh." Hawkeye thumped his tail against the frozen ground. Cole looked back at the saplings, at the alcove waiting in the stone hillside below. This wasn't the first time people doubted him. It probably wouldn't be the last. But winter didn't care who mocked you. Winter only cared whether you were prepared. And he would be. He raised the axe again, breath fogging against the cold. "Come on, boy," he said. "Hist. We've got work to finish." And the sound of steel meeting wood echoed through the Sawtooth Mountains like a promise no amount of laughter could break. By the second morning, the cold bit harder. A thin crust of frost glazed the ground, cracking under Cole's boots as he made his way back to the alcove. Hawkeye trotted ahead, nose low, tail swaying with purpose. The world was still, so still that Cole could hear the soft whisper of the dog's paws, brushing over the frozen leaves. Today was different. Today wasn't about scouting or planning. Today was the first real build day. Cole stood in front of the alcove and inhaled deeply. The curved stone wall shimmered faintly with morning light, like nature itself had carved the entrance to some forgotten shelter, waiting for the right man to find it. He brushed the cold rock with the back of his hand. "This is it, buddy," he murmured. "This is where we make winter blink first." Hawkeye gave a low, encouraging bark. Cole returned to the pile of saplings he'd cut the day before. His hands throbbed from swinging the axe, but pain was familiar, almost comforting. Something he could predict. Something he could use. He dragged the first sapling to the alcove's opening. Then he dug a shallow post hole into the packed earth, sweat forming under his coat, despite the biting wind. The sapling bent with a slow creak as he forced it across the opening, anchoring its ends deep on either side. One arch, then another, and another. By midday, a rib cage of young wood framed the alcove, curved like the spine of some wooden whale. Every strike of the shovel, every bend of the sapling stirred a faint echo in Cole's chest. Memories of building emergency shelters in places where no one could help them, where improvisation meant living until morning. That muscle memory steadied him now. But the world inside his head wasn't as steady. Halfway through bending the fifth sapling, a sound, sharp, metallic, rang through the forest. Not the sound of his tools, not wind, something else, something too close. In an instant, his body reacted. His pulse surged, his breath shortened, the world blurred. A flash of heat swept across his vision. Afghanistan, a village alleyway, the metallic snap of something behind a stack of bricks. His muscles tensed in that old, dangerous way, and he dropped the sapling, stumbling backward. Hawkeye barked sharply, leaping in front of him, chest low, eyes fierce. Cole gripped his knees, fighting to steady himself. "Easy, easy, Cole. You're here. Idaho. Not there. Not then." He squeezed his eyes shut, feeling the memory ripple backward like a wave returning to sea. Hawkeye nudged his arm again and again until Cole's breath slowed. When he finally opened his eyes, he found the source of the noise, a chunk of ice that had fallen from a high branch, shattering on a flat rock. Just ice. Just winter doing what winter does. Cole let out a shaky exhale. Yeah, I'm okay." He scratched Hawkeye between the ears. "Thanks for pulling me back." With the episode fading, he forced himself to continue. Work steadied him better than talking ever had. With Hawkeye watching the perimeter, Cole set the next sapling into place. Each arch he completed felt like reclaiming a piece of himself. By late afternoon, the frame stood formed and ready. 12 perfect arcs lined in a row, spaced evenly from rock face to open air, The structure looked crude but promising, primitive yet purposeful. Now came the harder part, the walls. Cole gathered the long willow shoots Hawkeye had helped him locate the day before. Thin, supple, living strands that bent like rope. He tested one, pulling it between his calloused hands. "This'll work," he muttered. He started weaving, over, under, row after row. The work was slow. His fingers numbed even through gloves. His back screamed, but the wall grew, an organic lattice tightening with each woven strand. As the sun dipped behind the ridge, the unfinished shelter glowed faintly in the amber light, as if the mountain itself approved of the effort. Cole stepped back to admire the progress, aching, exhausted, but feeling something he hadn't felt in months. Progress, direction, maybe even hope. Hawkeye nudged his leg, then trotted toward the creek bed. Cole followed and saw the dog pawing at a pale patch of earth. When Cole crouched, he recognized it instantly. Clay. Good clay. "You found it," Cole breathed, almost laughing. "You brilliant dog." Hawkeye wagged proudly. With this clay, he could seal the walls, make them windproof, make them strong enough to stand against the coming storms. He scooped a handful and squeezed. Perfect texture, heavy enough to bind, light enough to work with. Cole felt the day's exhaustion slip away, replaced by a renewed pulse of determination. "We can do this, Hawkeye. We really can." The dog barked once, sharp and clean, echoing between the trees like an agreement. As twilight gloom settled across the Sawtooth Mountains, Cole and Hawkeye returned to their sleeping spot beneath the stone alcove. The woven wall cast shadows across the ground, shadows shaped like the ribs of a creature guarding them from the cold. Cole settled his back against the rock. The pain in his hands throbbed like a heartbeat, but it didn't bother him. Pain meant progress. Pain meant he was alive. Hawkeye curled beside him, head resting on Cole's boot. "You and me, buddy," Cole whispered. "We'll see this through." Outside, the temperature dropped. Frost crept like silver across the earth. But inside the alcove, beneath the forming skeleton of their shelter, Cole Barrett felt, just for a moment, warm. And that was enough to keep him fighting one more day. By the next sunrise, the cold had stiffened his joints and made his breath puff like smoke with every exhale. He pushed himself upright, rubbed his hands together, and stepped outside. The Sawtooth Mountains glowed with the soft pink of early morning, the light slow and gentle as it slid down the jagged peaks. Hawkeye was already up, nose to the ground, tail swaying with steady confidence, his silent way of saying the day wasn't going to wait, and neither should they. Cole moved toward the woven wall he'd completed the night before. In the daylight, it looked sturdier than he remembered, arched slats bending in harmony, each strand of willow locked between the ribs of saplings. Primitive but promising. "Not bad for two broke mountain drifters," Cole muttered. Hawkeye's ears perked like he agreed. Cole rolled up his sleeves. Today was clay day. He needed to seal the lattice before the frost thickened, before the winds sharpened, before the mountains reminded him why winter here had taken so many lives. He hauled 2 armfuls of clay from the pale patch Hawkeye had discovered, mixing it with dry grass and a little water until it became thick, sticky, workable. Kneeling before the frame, he began pressing handfuls of the mixture into the gaps, smoothing and packing it until it formed a solid skin. Hours passed. Clay coated his sleeves, caked beneath his fingernails, streaked across his jaw. His arms ached from the steady repetition, but he kept going. He felt the weight of winter pressing closer every moment, pushing him forward. Around midday, Hawkeye's low rumble cut through the quiet. Cole turned. A truck approached along the dirt road at the base of the ridge, its engine old, coughing, and rattling as it climbed the slope. Dust swirled behind its tires like a wake in the air. Hawkeye moved to Cole's side, tail stiff, ready for anything. The truck slowed, then stopped a few yards away. The engine shut off with a sputter. A man climbed out. Older, mid-50s maybe. Weathered face, steady eyes. He wore a faded flannel shirt under a canvas jacket, and his boots had the scuffs of someone who'd walked through a lifetime of hard seasons. He tipped his hat as he approached, hands tucked politely into his pockets. "Afternoon," the man said, voice warm but cautious. "Saw smoke from my route down the valley. Thought someone might be setting up camp." Cole wiped clay from his hands. "Just passing through?" "Haul freight to some of the camps up north," the man replied. "Name's Nathan Hale." Cole nodded. "Cole Barrett." Nathan glanced at the half-finished shelter, eyes narrowing, not in judgment, but in recognition. "You're building a Quonset shape," he said, stepping closer to examine the frame. "Haven't seen one built from greenwood in decades." Cole blinked, surprised. "Most folks around here think it looks like a pile of firewood that forgot to fall over." Nathan chuckled, the lines around his mouth deepening. "Most folks around here ain't spent winters in real backcountry. Curve holds weight. Snow slides instead of settles. Wind pushes past instead of pushing in." Cole felt a quiet spark inside. Validation. Simple but sharp. Nathan circled the shelter once, nodding thoughtfully. "Looks like you're sealing with clay." "Best option I've got," Cole replied. "Money's tight. Weather's tighter." Nathan crouched, pressed a thumb to the drying wall and smiled. "You mix it with grass? Smart. Keeps it from cracking." A soft warmth spread through Cole's chest. Praise wasn't something he heard often anymore. Not since life got tangled, since nights got harder, since people started seeing the scars before they saw the man. "You've done this before?" Cole asked. Nathan stood. "Seen plenty of men try. Few get it right. You're on the right track." Hawkeye, having evaluated the stranger for a long moment, stepped forward and sniffed Nathan's hand. Nathan gave a gentle rub behind the dog's ear. "Good partner you've got," Nathan said. "He kept me alive more than once," Cole replied quietly. "Still does." Nathan studied Cole then, really studied him. In the lines of Cole's face he saw stories, hard stories, ones a man didn't speak unless he had to. Finally, Nathan nodded. "You'll make it through winter. Maybe better than most." Cole looked away, throat tightening. He felt the edge of gratitude pricking somewhere deeper than he expected. "Thank you," he said, his voice low, steadying itself. Nathan headed back toward his truck, pausing with one hand on the door. "Storm's coming in a few days. Small one, but enough to test your walls. Keep working. You'll want that clay solid before the winds pick up." "I'll get it done," Cole said. Nathan tipped his hat once more. "If you need help or just an extra pair of hands, folks at the Hale Depot know my route. You don't have to freeze alone." The engine sputtered back to life, coughing out a trail of dust as the truck rolled down the valley road. Cole stood in silence long after it disappeared. Hawkeye nudged his knee gently. "Yeah," Cole murmured. "Maybe we're not as alone as I thought." He turned back to the shelter. The frame looked different now. Not just a survival project, but a chance. A chance to reclaim what winter and life had taken from him. He plunged his hands into the clay again. Each press, each smear, each stroke of mud across willow and sapling felt like rebuilding pieces of himself. As the sun began to sink, turning the mountains copper and the sky a soft bruise of purple and blue, Cole stepped back to admire the progress. The wall stood nearly complete, curving and strong, catching the dusk light like a promise taking shape. Hawkeye sat at his side, head lifted toward the glowing ridge. "We're getting there, buddy," Cole whispered. "One more day at a time." And for the first time since the eviction, The future felt less like an ending and more like the beginning of something he hadn't dared hope for, something better. But hope never lasted long in the mountains. The next morning arrived with a strange hush in the air, the kind of quiet where even the birds seemed to hesitate before calling out. Cole rose, brushed frost from his shoulders, and checked the clay-dried wool. It was firming up nicely. In 2 days, it would be strong enough to take a storm head-on. He walked the perimeter of the shelter, checking the anchoring of each sapling frame, running his hands along the woven willow to ensure it held together. Hawkeye trailed beside him like a shadow, occasionally sniffing the wind as if sensing something unseen. Cole paused. "You smell something, boy?" Hawkeye didn't answer with a bark. He simply stiffened, ears pointed toward the trees. It wasn't the alert of danger, but the awareness of another presence approaching. A moment later, the crunch of boots on frost echoed from the downhill path. Cole straightened as a figure emerged through the trees, a man in a long charcoal coat, the collar stiff with frost. His steps were measured, practiced, almost ceremonial. He carried a leather-bound Bible tucked beneath one arm. Cole exhaled slowly. He recognized him. Pastor Alden Moore, one of the most respected voices in town, and one of the most judgmental. Moore stopped a few yards away, surveying the half-finished shelter, as if it personally offended him. Hawkeye padded forward, placing himself between Cole and the pastor, quiet, but unmistakably protective. "Mr. Barrett," Pastor Moore said, his voice smooth as frozen river stone, "I've been informed you're living out here." Cole kept his tone neutral. "Just getting through winter." Moore's eyes flicked to Hawkeye. "With that animal." Cole felt Hawkeye's muscles tense under his hand. "He's my partner." Moore exhaled sharply, disapproval fogging the cold air. "A man with your condition should not be isolated in the wilderness with a large, unpredictable dog. You need structure, guidance, order." Cole resisted the urge to step back. He'd heard this tone before, pity hidden beneath control. "We're managing." "No," Moore replied firmly. "You're surviving like a feral creature. Look at you, living in a hole in the ground, sleeping beside a beast. Is this what your service to this country has come to?" Cole's jaw clenched. A flicker of heat rose in his chest. Not anger, something deeper, something sharp. Moore stepped closer, lowering his voice as if offering salvation. "The church can give you work, food, a roof, but the dog must go. We cannot allow violence in the basement quarters." Cole blinked. "Violence?" Moore gestured toward Hawkeye. "Those dogs are trained for combat, for aggression. They snap without warning." "He saved my life," Cole interrupted, voice trembling with quiet conviction. "More than once. When I was wounded, he dragged me out of fire. He stayed with me through nights I didn't think I'd make it. He stays when people don't." Pastor Moore stiffened. "Mr. Barrett, pride is a sin. You must not let sentiment blind you. A man must know when to let go." "I'm not letting go of him," Cole said softly, but firmly. The pastor's eyes hardened. "Think carefully. Winter is not kind, nor is the wild, and when your shelter collapses, because it will, the church's offer will no longer stand." Cole held his ground. "I appreciate the concern, but I'm not your responsibility." Moore nodded once, cold, mechanical. "Very well. I have done my Christian duty by offering you a path. If you refuse it, the consequences are yours." He turned sharply and strode back down the trail, boots crunching rhythmically until the forest swallowed the sound. Silence returned to the ridge. Cole stood motionless, breath tight. It wasn't the offer that bothered him. He expected nothing from the town. It was the way Moore had spoken of Hawkeye. as if loyalty was a burden, as if the only part of Cole still whole was something to be discarded. Hawkeye nudged his hand gently. Cole sank to one knee and wrapped his arms around the dog's neck, pressing his forehead into the warm fur. "You're not going anywhere. Not now, not ever." For a moment, everything inside him steadied, but as he rose, he noticed something new in the distance. Thin clouds gathering above the ridge, darkening at the edges. The kind that carried wind and teeth. A small storm, Nathan had warned, enough to test the shelter. Cole turned to the wall of woven willow and clay. "We've got to finish before that hits." He worked faster than the day before, fingers red and cracked, palms raw. He patched every seam, packed clay into every gap. He reinforced the ribs with extra willow bands, each movement sharper, more determined. Hawkeye watched every step, pacing the perimeter, occasionally trotting up the trail as if making sure Pastor Moore wasn't returning. Hours passed, and the temperature fell again, shadows stretching long and thin across the clearing. Cole's breath turned ragged, but he didn't stop. Not now. Not when winter was already sniffing at the door. By dusk, the wall stood nearly complete, a solid dome building itself into the very bones of the mountain. Clay dried in thick coats. Willow strands tightened under the cold. The structure looked less like a makeshift shelter and more like something that belonged here, something the storm might respect. Cole stepped back, chest heaving. Hawkeye moved beside him, leaning close. "We'll prove him wrong," Cole whispered. "We'll prove them all wrong." Above them, the first thin snowflakes drifted down, silent, delicate, and deadly in their promise. Cole lifted his hand to catch one. It melted instantly against his skin. "Storm's coming," he murmured. "Let's be ready." And as night closed in, the mountain grew quiet again, watching, waiting, while a veteran and his loyal dog prepared for the test that would shape everything still to come. The storm arrived before dawn. It came not with gentle snowfall, but with a hard slap of wind that rattled branches and sent a low moan rolling down the ridge. Cole woke instantly, heart kicking against his ribs, the instinct to brace for impact firing before his mind fully caught up. For a moment, he wasn't in Idaho anymore. He wasn't in an alcove. He was somewhere overseas, dust and smoke rising around him, the ground shaking, the world collapsing in a thunder that tore through bone. Hawkeye sensed it. He always did. The dog pressed his head against Cole's chest, steady and warm, grounding him through the darkness. Cole closed his eyes, rode out the flash, and forced his breathing back under control. "You're all right," he whispered, though he wasn't sure if he was talking to the dog or himself. "We're here. We're safe." A sudden blast of wind struck the shelter, sending the woven wall creaking under the pressure. Clay flakes loosened and scattered like snow inside the dome. The air temperature plummeted. Cole pushed himself upright. The storm wasn't waiting for sunrise. Outside, the world had turned white. Snow whipped past the entrance in frantic streaks, driven sideways by gusts fierce enough to bend the saplings on the ridge. Trees swayed violently, and the howl of wind sounded like distant artillery rolling across the mountains. Cole stepped to the front of the shelter and braced the side of it with both hands, testing how it held. It groaned, but didn't shift. The willow weave flexed. The sapling ribs shuddered but stayed true to form, distributing the pressure with surprising grace. "It's holding," he murmured in disbelief. A gust slammed into the wall again, stronger this time, so strong Cole felt it through the ground beneath his boots. Snow piled against the outer curve like a wave breaking against stone. Hawkeye barked sharply, pacing the floor, tail stiff, hackles raised. Cole knelt and placed a calming hand on the dog's neck. "We built it right," he whispered. "We did. It's gonna hold." Hours passed with the storm battering the mountainside. The dome flexed with every hit, but the arch shape worked exactly the way he hoped. Snow slid down the rounded top instead of settling. Wind followed the curve instead of digging its claws into the structure. This was it. The test of everything he'd built, everything he'd fought for, everything he had left. Cole felt exhaustion tug at him, but he refused to lie down. Not until he knew for sure. When the wind shrieked at its loudest, he sat with his back against the frame, letting his weight reinforce the structure. Hawkeye curled against his legs, eyes fixed on the entrance as if guarding them both from the storm itself. And then came the worst moment. A deafening crack echoed from somewhere up the ridge. Cole froze. Trees fractured like that right before they toppled. He braced his hands in the dirt, listening. Another crack. Then a long groan, a massive trunk straining under wind and ice. Cole shut his eyes. Not toward us. Not toward us. A thunderous crash split the air as the tree fell. Silence. Then the echo rolled away. Cole waited, breath held, listening for breaking saplings, splintered frames, or the sound of snow collapsing into their entrance. Nothing. When he finally exhaled, it came out shaky. That was too close. Hawkeye placed a paw on Cole's knee, sensing the lingering tremor in his body. Cole rubbed the dog's back. I know. You're right. Doesn't matter. We keep going. The storm raged for nearly 40 hours. 40 hours of wind clawing at the dome. 40 hours of snow piling up, sliding off, piling up again. 40 hours of cold that crept through seams, through fabric, through bone. But inside the shelter, the ground stayed dry. The clay held strong. The willow weave didn't split. The saplings flexed and returned to form, like ribs protecting a heart. Cole had never built anything that felt more like a second skin. By the time the winds finally softened and the sky turned from pitch black to a cloudy silver, he felt as worn as the mountains themselves. When he stepped outside for the first time in nearly 2 days, the world looked transformed. Snowbank drifts towered around the alcove, some taller than he was. Trees bowed under the heavy white. The sky was soft and silent, the kind of silence that only follows nature's fury. Cole stared at the shelter. Not a single dent, not a single crack, not one sign of collapse. He pressed his palm to the curved outer wall and felt only strength beneath his fingers. Hawkeye bounded through the snow, leaping and barking with joy now that the storm had passed. His paws kicked up sprays of powder as he circled Cole in excited loops. Cole's throat tightened. He knelt in the snow, pulling the dog into both arms. "We made it, boy," he whispered, voice thick. "We built something that kept us alive." And for the first time in a very long time, Cole let himself cry. Not from fear or grief or memory, but from relief, from triumph, from the realization that he had built something that the world hadn't managed to break. He rose slowly, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. The mountains shimmered in soft light, as if acknowledging the victory of a man and his dog who refused to surrender. "Come on, Hawkeye," Cole said, straightening his shoulders. "Let's check the wood. We've still got winter to fight." The dog barked once, sharp, bright, ready for whatever came next. The storm had tested the shelter. Now it was time to see if the world was ready to stop testing Cole. The morning after the storm felt like the mountain itself was holding its breath. The wind had quieted to nothing, leaving behind a vast white stillness that blanketed every ridge and hollow. Snow lay piled in deep folds, smooth as icing on a cake, undisturbed except for Hawkeye's paw prints weaving excitedly across the drifts. Cole stepped out into the pale light, boots crunching through a thin crust of ice. His breath rose in soft plumes, and every muscle in his body ached from bracing through the long hours of the storm. But beneath the exhaustion, something else stirred, something he hadn't felt in far too long. Pride. He turned back to look at the shelter. There it stood, half buried in snow but triumphant. The clay-smeared willow walls held their curve perfectly. The sapling ribs hadn't bowed. Not a single seam had cracked. The bark shingles on the top gleamed with a thin sheen of ice, reflecting the winter sun like glass. It looked solid, honest, earned. Cole placed his hand on the outer wall. The clay felt cool but dry beneath his fingers. Dry. Even after 40 hours of wind and snow and punishment, he swallowed hard. "We did it, Hawkeye," he whispered. The dog bounded toward him, barking joyfully, his breath puffing in white clouds. Hawkeye slid across the snow, skidding into Cole's legs and nearly knocking him off balance. Cole laughed, a sound so unexpected and raw that it startled even him. It had been months since he'd laughed like that. "Easy, boy," he chuckled, kneeling to scratch behind Hawkeye's ears. "You're acting like you built the thing yourself." But in a way, Hawkeye had. He'd found the clay. He'd found the alcove. He'd kept Cole grounded through sleepless nights and shaken moments, a partner in every sense of the word. Cole rose and ducked back inside the shelter. The interior was untouched by the storm. Every piece of firewood looked exactly the same as when he had stacked it. Dry, firm, ready to burn. He pulled one split log from the middle of the pile and inspected it. The wood was perfect. No dampness, no swelling of the grain, no cold slickness from condensation. Just clean, ready-to-burn pine. Cole exhaled slowly, overwhelmed by the simple victory of a warm fire waiting in the future. For a man who had walked through too many winters alone, both real and in his mind, the sight of dry wood was nothing short of a miracle. He set the log down and sat on the packed earth floor, letting the relief wash over him. Hawkeye sat beside him, pressing his shoulder against Cole's arm. "You know," Cole murmured, patting the dog, "I've built things before. Barricades, observation posts, quick shelters, but none of them felt like this." Hawkeye tilted his head, listening intently, as if he understood. This one's ours," Cole said softly. "Not the Corps', not the government's, not some unit in a place I'll never see again. It's the first thing I've built for myself in a long time." A memory flashed across his mind, the desert sun, the scent of dust and sweat, the sound of Hawkeye's bark seconds before everything went wrong. A warning bark. A saving bark. Cole blinked hard, grounding himself. "I'm still here," he whispered. "Because of you." Hawkeye pressed closer. Cole stood and brushed dirt from his hands. He stepped outside for a lungful of crisp mountain air. The ridge glowed beneath the winter sun, the snow sparkling like a field of diamonds. For a moment, the world looked almost peaceful. Almost. A soft whistle cut across the quiet. A human voice carried faintly through the still air. Cole stiffened. Hawkeye's ears shot up like arrows. Then came the crunch of snowshoes. Cole turned to see a man climbing the ridge, one of the loggers who had mocked him days earlier. The man reached the clearing and stopped short, stunned as he took in the sight of the shelter, still standing proud after a storm that should have flattened it. Cole folded his arms, waiting. The logger scratched his beard, humbled. "I'll be damned," he muttered. "Things still upright." "It is," Cole replied, voice calm. The man kicked at a drift of snow. Storm snapped 2 of our sheds in half. One roof caved in, lost close to a cord of wood. Cole didn't answer. He just stood, letting the silence do the talking. The logger cleared his throat. "Look, I gave you a hard time. We all did. But this," he gestured at the shelter, "this is good work. Really good. You think you could show me how to build one? Don't need charity. Just need to keep my boys warm." Cole studied him for a long moment. Behind the beard and the rough tone was something honest. Humility, fear for his family, a willingness to learn. And Cole understood that kind of fear better than most. He nodded slowly. "Yeah, I can teach you." The logger exhaled with relief. "Thank you. Name's Ray, by the way." "Cole." Ray extended a hand. Cole shook it, firm and steady. Hawkeye sniffed Ray's boots once, then accepted him with a quiet huff. Ray gave a half smile. "Guess your dog approves." "He usually knows before I do," Cole said. Ray turned to leave but paused. "A few folks in town are going to want to see this. You mind?" Cole hesitated, a flicker of old anxiety rising. Crowds, attention, eyes on him. He swallowed it down. "Bring whoever needs help," he said at last. "Winter's bigger than all of us." Ray nodded and disappeared down the ridge. Cole exhaled slowly. The storm had changed things. Not just the land, but people. Doubt was giving way to respect. Mockery was turning into something else. Something he wasn't used to. Recognition. Cole knelt beside Hawkeye. "Looks like we're not the only ones trying to survive out here." Hawkeye licked his face once, as if to say, "Good. It's about time the world sees what you can do." Cole looked at the shelter, this curved, clay-covered dome that nature and necessity had shaped into being, and felt warmth swell inside him. "Come on, boy," he said softly. "Let's get ready. Looks like we're about to have visitors." For the first time in years, Cole Barrett felt like he had something to offer the world again. And that was the second miracle of the day. The following morning broke softer than expected, as if the mountain itself had chosen to give Cole one peaceful breath before testing him again. A thin veil of clouds drifted overhead, diffusing the early light into a cool silver wash that spread across the valley. The shelter stood strong beneath it, unyielding, proud, almost alive in the quiet. Cole stepped outside, breathing the cold air deep into his lungs. Hawkeye padded beside him, snow dusting his dark fur from rolling in drifts. The dog shook once, sending tiny crystals scattering into the breeze. "Looks like another good day to work," Cole said. But today, work wasn't the only thing coming. By mid-morning, voices drifted up the slope, hesitant at first, then clearer as the group grew closer. Hawkeye lifted his head, ears pointed toward the sound. Cole rested a calming hand on the dog's back. "It's okay," he murmured. "I think we know who that is." A few moments later, Ray, the logger from the day before, appeared through the trees. But he wasn't alone. 2 other men from the lumber yard followed him, both wearing thick winter coats and expressions that hovered somewhere between curiosity and apology. Behind them trudged a 4th man, older, his steps slower but determined. His cheeks were windburned from years of working outdoors, and his eyes carried a tired warmth that reminded Cole of some of the older Marines who used to wander into the barracks just to check on the younger men. Someone who understood hard winters. Ray lifted a hand. "Morning, Cole." Cole nodded. "Morning." The group stopped a few yards away, taking in the shelter, the smooth clay, the curved walls that had faced down the storm and won. The oldest man let out a low whistle. "Well, I'll be damned," he said. Ray wasn't exaggerating. Cole tried not to feel the flicker of pride that rose in his chest. He didn't want to enjoy the moment too much. Not after the years of feeling like society had written him off as defective. The second logger, a man named Greg, with a thick mustache and a nervous habit of rubbing his hands together, cleared his throat. "We, heard what happened. That your place held up better than the sheds down near the mill." "It did," Cole said simply. Ray stepped forward, removing his hat. "We were wondering if you'd show us how to build one. Winter hit us early this year. Some of our storage won't make it through the next storm." Cole eyed them carefully. These were the same men who'd laughed at him, who'd dismissed him. But now they stood with humility in their stance and worry in their eyes. Not pride, not mockery. Just men trying to protect their families from the cold. Hawkeye sniffed Ray's boot, then circled the group with slow, deliberate steps. Not threatening, just assessing. Cole watched him closely. Hawkeye never misread someone's intentions. When the dog returned to sit at Cole's side, tail steady, Cole made his decision. "Yeah," he said, "I'll teach you." Greg exhaled in relief, the tension leaving his shoulders in a visible slump. "Thank God," he muttered. "I didn't know what we were going to do." The older man stepped forward and extended a hand. "Name's Walter. My son's got 2 little ones, both sick with colds. We can't afford to lose any more wood to rot or snow. Thank you, son." Cole hesitated only a moment before shaking his hand. The grip was firm, honest. "Come on," Cole said. "Let me show you how it works." They gathered around the shelter as Cole explained each step, from bending the saplings into arches to weaving willow strands, to the clay mixture Hawkeye had helped him find. Walter ran his palm along the dried surface. "You mixed clay with grass?" he asked. "Helps keep it from cracking," Cole replied. Ray nodded thoughtfully. "Clever. Never thought of that." "It's not fancy," Cole said, "but it works with the mountain instead of fighting it." Walter looked at Cole in a new way. Not with pity, not with doubt, but with respect. "You learned this in the service?" "Some of it," Cole answered. "Most of it from needing to survive." A gentle breeze rustled through the pines as the men took notes, sketched diagrams, and asked questions about spacing and bracing. Cole answered each one patiently, surprised at how natural it felt to teach again, to guide others, to be useful. Hawkeye sat a few feet away, watching like a sentinel. When their questions finally slowed, the men exchanged glances. Ray cleared his throat. "Listen, we want to apologize. For laughing earlier. For being, well, idiots." Cole shrugged. "It's fine." "No," Ray insisted, shaking his head. "It ain't. We judged you without knowing a thing about you, and we were wrong." Greg nodded vigorously. "Real wrong." Cole wasn't used to apologies. They felt foreign, almost uncomfortable, but also strangely healing. Walter stepped closer. "Son, this shelter might save a few families this winter. That's worth more than pride." Cole swallowed, feeling a lump form in his chest. "I'm just doing what I can." Walter gave him a gentle pat on the shoulder. "You're doing more than most." After gathering a few saplings for practice, the men started back down the ridge. Before disappearing into the trees, Ray turned once more. "We'll send folks your way," he called. "Anyone who needs help. They should learn from the man who stood up to the storm." Cole exhaled slowly as the forest grew quiet again. Hawkeye nudged him, sensing the swirl of emotions he didn't voice. "Guess they don't see us as crazy anymore," Cole murmured. Hawkeye barked once, then pressed closer. Cole looked at the shelter, at the men's footprints leading away, at the mountains rising like guardians over the valley. Something had changed today. Quietly, gently, without force. People saw him again, not as broken, not as unstable, but as a man with knowledge, strength, and worth. Cole placed his hand on the curved wall of the shelter. "We're not invisible anymore, buddy," he whispered. And for the first time since he'd returned from war, he didn't feel like a ghost wandering through someone else's world. He felt present. He felt seen. He felt needed. The mountain wind brushed past, carrying the faint promise of storms still to come. But for now, for this moment, the world felt a little warmer. Cole turned back to Hawkeye. "Come on, boy. Let's prep for the next step. Looks like we're gonna have a whole lot of company soon. Hawkeye trotted ahead, tail high, leading him back toward the shelter that had just become more than survival. It had become purpose. 3 quiet days passed, the kind of days where winter seemed to pause and catch its breath before swinging again. Cole spent them reinforcing the shelter, teaching Ray and his crew how to bend saplings properly, and gathering extra clay before the ground froze too solid to dig. The world felt steadier than it had in months. But peace never lasted long in the mountains. On the 4th morning, just as the sky was beginning to shift from ink black to pale gray, Hawkeye jolted awake with a sharp growl. Not the alert he used for deer or coyotes. Not the curious bark he saved for approaching neighbors. This one was different, urgent, cutting, filled with purpose. Cole sat up instantly, heart thudding. "What is it, boy?" Hawkeye didn't wait. He bounded out of the shelter, paws carving clean tracks through the cold snow. Cole grabbed his coat and followed, the air biting at his face as he stepped outside. The morning had a strange stillness to it, not peaceful, more like the world was listening for something. The sky hung low, pressed close to the earth, heavy with an unfallen snow that painted everything in a muted silver. "Hawkeye!" Cole called, but the dog was already headed toward the tree line, moving with determined urgency. Cole's breath caught. In the service, that kind of movement meant danger, or someone in desperate need. He quickened his steps, boots sinking into the crusted snow, following the trail of paw prints. Hawkeye stopped near a narrow path that dipped into a gully. He barked, short, sharp, calling Cole forward. Then Cole heard it, a sound barely louder than the wind, a faint cry. Weak, shaky, human. Cole froze. "Hawkeye, show me," he whispered. The dog darted down the slope, weaving between low branches, until they reached a small, half-collapsed campsite hidden beneath a stand of firs. A thin layer of fresh snow covered everything, but there were signs of struggle, footprints, dragged marks, broken branches, and in the center of the mess was a ripped canvas tent barely standing upright. Inside the tent, a small boy lay curled beneath 2 threadbare blankets, his lips blue, breath shallow. A woman knelt beside him, shaking from cold and exhaustion, her hair frozen in strands along her cheek. A man lay a few feet away, pinned under a fallen tree limb. His leg was twisted in a way that made Cole wince, though he didn't allow himself to imagine more. They were the Carter family. Cole recognized them from the supply route, a pair of travelers who had been drifting between small towns with their 3 children, looking for work, shelter, anything they could manage to get through winter. The mother looked up when Cole approached, tears frozen in the corners of her eyes. "Please," she whispered, "help us. We've been stuck here since the storm." Cole knelt beside the boy, touching his face gently. Cold, too cold. The boy couldn't survive another night like this. His heart tightened. He looked at the father next, alive but suffering. The man tried to shift when he saw Cole, pain washing across his face. Hawkeye moved to the man's side, lowering his head and offering comfort with a soft whine. "We'll get you out," Cole said quietly. "All of you." The woman began to cry. Not loud sobs, just soft, exhausted tears. We couldn't get the firewood dry. Everything's soaked. We ran out yesterday. I didn't know what to do." Cole swallowed hard. He knew exactly what cold did to people. He had seen it overseas. He had seen it in the mountains when hikers underestimated winter. Cold didn't kill quickly. It stole life piece by piece until the body simply quit. He reached out and placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. "You held out this long. That means you're stronger than you think." Hawkeye nuzzled the girl curled under the blankets, a little girl of maybe 6 years old who had barely moved since Cole arrived. The dog licked her cheek gently. Her eyelids fluttered. "She's okay," Cole whispered. "Hawkeye's got her." But inside, a deep ache spread through him. This family. They were hours, maybe minutes, from something irreversible. Cole stood abruptly. "Listen to me," he said, his voice gaining strength. "I have a shelter up the ridge. Firewood. Heat. Clay walls that won't let the wind through. I can get you there. But we have to move now." The woman nodded through trembling lips. Cole first lifted the tree limb off the father's leg using leverage from a fallen log. The man cried out, despite trying not to, and Hawkeye immediately pressed in close, calming him with the steady weight of his presence. Cole worked quickly, moving the family one by one. He wrapped the boy in an extra coat he carried. He helped the mother stand, leaning her weight against his arm. He guided the girl as Hawkeye gently pushed her forward with his body. Then he fashioned a drag sled from the remnants of the tent poles and used it to pull the injured father across the snow. Hawkeye walked alongside, nose brushing the man's cheek every few steps, grounding him against the pain. The climb back to Cole's shelter was brutal. Wind bit at them from all sides. Snow slipped beneath his boots. But Cole kept going, every muscle in his body straining, not for himself, but for them. And finally, the curved silhouette of the shelter appeared through the trees. When they reached the entrance, Cole ushered the family inside, helping them settle near the small iron stove. He fed it one of his precious dry logs and lit it, the flame catching instantly. Warmth began to spread through the clay-lined dome. The woman touched the wall, tears falling again. "It's so warm," she whispered. "How did you—" Cole shook his head. "Doesn't matter. You're safe now." Hawkeye curled up beside the children, letting them bury their fingers in his warm fur. The boy smiled weakly for the first time since Cole had seen him. The father met Cole's eyes, pain clouding his own. "I thought we were done for," he said quietly. "My family owes you our lives." Cole swallowed the emotion rising in his throat. "You don't owe me anything. Winter tests us all. We get through it together or not at all." For a long moment, no one spoke. The fire crackled softly. Hawkeye's steady breathing filled the space with comfort. The shelter, once just a structure of clay and saplings, felt suddenly fuller than it ever had. Alive. Cole looked at the family huddled near the fire, at Hawkeye watching over them with gentle eyes, and felt something shift deep inside him. Purpose had called him earlier, but now something else took shape. A responsibility, a chance to protect again, a reminder that even after everything he had lost, he still had the power to save. And for Cole Barrett, that realization was nothing short of a miracle of its own. "Rest," he told them softly. "You're safe here tonight." But as he sat beside the fire, fatigue settling into his bones, he couldn't shake one thought. Winter wasn't done with them yet. And whatever came next, he and Hawkeye would be ready. Morning arrived slowly, as if the sun itself hesitated to disturb the fragile warmth inside the shelter. The Carter family slept in a tight cluster near the stove, bundled in extra blankets Cole had laid out. The children curled against Hawkeye's body, small hands buried in his thick fur. The dog didn't move an inch, not even when Cole rose to his feet. He only watched with soft, amber eyes, as if understanding his presence alone kept the children anchored to life. Cole stepped outside into the crisp morning air. The storm had left behind a world carved in white, the snow glittering under faint sunlight like a landscape forged from ground diamonds. The mountains were still, watching him with the solemn silence of sentinels carved from ice. He knelt beside the firewood stack, stomach tightening as he counted. He had a little over 3 cords left. Enough for himself and Hawkeye to survive a full winter if they were careful, conservative, disciplined. But not enough for 2 families. He rubbed a hand across his jaw. "We'll figure it out," he whispered to no one and to everything all at once. He carried an armful of wood inside and began feeding the stove. The crackle of dry pine filled the shelter, a sound so warm it almost cracked something in his chest. The Carter children stirred, blinking sleepily. The mother woke next, her eyes red but clearer than the night before. The father tried to sit up, wincing as pain rippled through his injured leg. "You saved us," the mother whispered, voice breaking. "We thought we were going to freeze out there." Cole shook his head. "You were just unlucky. Winter hit too fast." But she shook hers. "No, we were dying. And you gave us another day." Cole looked down, suddenly self-conscious. Hawkeye stood and pressed his head into Cole's thigh, grounding him in the moment. The father cleared his throat. "We don't have anything to repay you with. No money, no supplies, nothing left." Cole met his gaze. "You don't owe me a thing." The man swallowed hard, tears threatening to spill. "You're giving us your firewood. I saw your pile. You won't make it through winter like that." Cole shrugged softly. "I'll cut more." The mother shook her head. "There's too much snow now. You'll risk frostbite. Or worse." Cole didn't respond. He didn't need to, because he had already decided. He'd been cold before. He'd battled harder winters inside his own head than this mountain could ever throw at him. He could push through. But those kids? That family? They'd break long before he did. He rose, grabbed his coat, and stepped outside again. Hawkeye followed closely, tail low, sensing the weight of the decision. Cole looked at the towering stacks of wood inside the shelter, his lifeline, and then he began dividing it. Half for him and Hawkeye, half for the Carter family. The simplest math he had ever done, and the hardest. Hawkeye nudged his elbow as if questioning him. Cole knelt and cupped the dog's face. "We'll be okay," he murmured. "You and me. We've been through worse." The dog pressed his forehead to Cole's in quiet acceptance. Then Cole carried load after load of firewood into a separate corner of the shelter, building the Carter family's stockpile piece by piece. The mother covered her mouth when she realized what he was doing. The father's eyes filled with disbelief. "Cole," the man whispered, voice cracking. "You can't. This is too much." Cole shook his head firmly. "What I can't do is let you go another night without heat. Not with kids in the picture." Hawkeye lay down beside the girl again, letting her stroke his fur, her small fingers trembling less than before. The mother knelt beside Cole. "If you ever need us, anything, you come to us. Please, let us repay this somehow." "You already did," Cole said. She blinked. "How?" "You reminded me why I fought so hard to stay alive." For the first time, true warmth, not just physical heat, filled the clay-wrapped shelter. A warmth deeper than fire, deeper than walls, a human warmth built from gratitude and survival. But as the Carters rested again, Cole slipped outside with Hawkeye, tightening his gloves. He stared at the line of trees along the ridge, where thick lodgepole pines grew shoulder to shoulder. Cutting fresh wood through snow this deep would be brutal, dangerous, backbreaking. But he had no choice now. "Come on, boy," he whispered. "We've got double the load." Hawkeye barked once, a short, determined sound, and bounded ahead, paws flying through powder. Cole tightened his coat and followed, axe strapped to his belt, breath clouding in the cold. He was exhausted. His hands were cracked. His body ached from days of labor and nights without real sleep. But there was a fire inside him now that even the mountain couldn't extinguish. A fire fueled by the simple belief that if he had the strength to survive, he had the responsibility to help others do the same. Hours later, after hauling back the first new stack of wood, Cole trudged into the shelter, shoulders heavy but spirit steady. Hawkeye limped slightly, one paw sore from dragging branches through the ice, but the dog pushed ahead anyway, refusing to rest until the load was secured. The Carter children rushed to greet him. The girl threw her arms around Hawkeye's neck, burying her face in his fur. The boy handed Cole a small pine cone he had been playing with. A simple gesture, but it brought a tight sting to Cole's chest. "You're strong," the boy whispered. "Like a hero." Cole looked down, eyes softening. "I'm just a man trying to help." But the boy shook his head. "Heroes help even when they're tired." Cole didn't argue. He couldn't. His throat was too tight to speak. That night, the shelter glowed with firelight. The Carters slept safely. Hawkeye lay near Cole, one paw bandaged, eyes half closed, but alert. Cole stared at the clay walls, at the stack of wood he'd given away, at the family breathing peacefully because he and Hawkeye had refused to walk past their suffering. He felt something settle deep in his chest. Not pride, not relief, but a quiet certainty. He had purpose again, not the kind assigned by rank or uniform, but the kind earned through compassion and grit. As the fire crackled, Cole whispered to Hawkeye, "We did good today." Hawkeye nudged his hand gently, and for the first time since the storm, Cole allowed himself to rest, knowing winter would come again, harder than before, but knowing he wouldn't face it alone. Because some battles were not meant to be fought for yourself. Some battles were won by giving everything you had, even when you had almost nothing. Winter did not ease up after that day. If anything, it grew sharper. Icier winds, heavier snow, nights so cold the stars seemed frozen in place. But inside the curved walls of the clay-sealed shelter, 2 families and 1 dog endured with a warmth that had nothing to do with fire. The Carters recovered slowly. The father's leg remained bound in a splint Cole fashioned from pine boards and paracord. The children regained their color and strength. Their mother took to helping Cole tend the fire, ration food, and boil water. Even with 2 families under one roof, the shelter held strong. And Cole, though exhausted, found himself waking each day with something he hadn't felt in years, a sense of belonging. But winter always had one more test to give. It arrived late in the season, after weeks of sub-zero nights. A storm unlike the first, quieter but colder. The kind that seeped into bone and stole breath in the dark. Cole fed the stove late into the night, adding log after precious log from his dwindling pile. He counted what was left. Barely enough for 3 more days. He'd been preparing to cut more wood the next morning, but the storm came early, burying the ridge in drifts taller than a man, sealing the forest behind walls of white. "Looks like it's just us and what we've got," Cole murmured. Hawkeye rested beside the stove, his bandaged paw stretched out. He lifted his head at Cole's voice, ears tuning to the undertones of worry. "We'll get through," Cole promised, rubbing the dog's neck. "We always do." The Carters watched from their bedding. The children were quiet, sensing the tension in the room. The mother whispered, "We're safe because of you." Cole shook his head. "We're safe because we've got each other." That night, the winds roared like a living thing. Snow drifted high across the entrance. The clay walls held firm, creaking but never cracking. Hawkeye paced the shelter's edge, checking for cold leaks or weak spots, occasionally nudging Cole back to the fire when he drifted too far in thought. Cole didn't sleep. Winter demanded attention. By morning, the storm had passed, and with it, the last threat of the season. Cole stepped out into a world transformed. The sky was crystal blue, the trees shimmered with frost, and the air carried the faintest promise of spring. He knelt in the snow and let the sun warm his face. "We made it," he whispered to the stillness. Hawkeye pressed against his hip, tail sweeping softly behind him. Word travels strangely in mountain towns, slow as mud when it doesn't matter, fast as wildfire when it does. By the time Cole escorted the Carter family into town a week later, the story had already outrun him. Ray and Walter waved them over first. Their wives hurried out with blankets. Children stared wide-eyed at Hawkeye, whispering about the hero dog on the ridge. Then the mayor arrived, flanked by 2 members of the town council. Pastor Moore came last, hat in hand, expression uncertain. Cole stood at the town center as questions and gratitude flew around him, in a whirlwind he didn't know how to respond to. He wasn't used to people looking at him. Not like this. Not with admiration. Not with respect. The mayor extended a hand. "Mr. Barrett, we've heard everything. You saved these folks. And you built something remarkable up on that ridge." Cole swallowed. "I just helped where I could." The mayor shook his head. "You did more than that. You've taught half the men in this town how to build shelters that'll save their families. And you gave your own firewood to strangers." He cleared his throat, almost emotional. "We'd like to offer you something in return." Cole tensed. Offers rarely came without strings. But then the mayor pointed to the old piece of land on the eastern rise, long unused, barren but wide and sunlit. "That parcel's been empty for years," he said. "Town council voted to grant it to you, free and clear, on one condition." Cole braced. Hawkeye leaned against him as if to steady the moment. "You teach," the mayor said gently. "Teach anyone who needs it. Help us prepare for winters like this one." Cole let the breath he'd been holding escape slowly. "I can do that." Walter clapped him on the shoulder. "We figured you could." Even Pastor Moore stepped forward, clearing his throat. "Mr. Barrett, I may have misjudged you." His eyes lowered toward Hawkeye. "Both of you." Cole didn't want to revisit their earlier confrontation, but he nodded. "Thank you." The Carter family came next, the children hugging Hawkeye around the neck, the mother holding Cole's hands as she whispered, "You saved my family. I named this little one after you." She touched her newborn daughter's cheek. "Her name is Colleen." Cole felt his throat tighten. He looked at Hawkeye, who sat tall beside him, chest puffed with quiet pride. "This was never just about me," Cole said softly. "We all made it because we didn't give up on each other." Spring seeped into the ridge slowly, melting snowbanks, coaxing green from beneath the earth, softening the clay walls of the shelter into gentler curves. Cole began marking out the foundation of his new cabin. Hawkeye stayed close, carrying small sticks, dropping them proudly at Cole's feet. Visitors walked up the trail often, families, workers, townsfolk, all asking Cole to show them what he'd built, how he survived, how they could build their own. Cole taught every one of them. He showed them where to find clay, how to bend saplings, how to weave willow under frost-stiffened hands. He showed them how nature worked with you if you listened. And each night, as the sun dipped behind the mountains, Cole stood beside his shelter, the shelter that saved him, saved the Carters, and saved something inside him that he thought had died long ago. Purpose, hope, belonging. Hawkeye sat at his side, guardian of the ridge, hero of the winter. Cole rested a hand on the dog's back. "We did it, buddy. From nothing but $7 and a place nobody wanted." The dog nudged him, as if correcting him. Cole smiled. "Right. And one loyal partner." The curved shelter behind them glowed golden in the evening light, a reminder carved from saplings, clay, and sheer determination that survival wasn't just about strength. It was about heart, and now it would live on as a gift to the town, a legacy built by a man and his dog who refused to be broken by winter. He watched the mountains turn pink with the last light of day and whispered, "Here's to new beginnings." And Hawkeye, sensing the peace settling over his friend's voice, rested his head on Cole's shoulder as spring finally claimed the valley. If you made it to the end of this story, I'd love to know you were here. Drop a simple 1 in the comments, just one number, to let us know you're part of this journey. And if you want more stories of grit, heart, and the unbreakable bond between a veteran and his loyal dog, make sure you subscribe and stay with us. There are many more mountains to climb, more winters to face, and more stories waiting to be told. See you in the next one.